All right, welcome everybody to this session on identity governance. My name is Peter van Leeuwen. I'm a product manager here at the Identity Division at Microsoft, together here with Manoj. Manoj, can you introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, I'm Manoj Reddy, an Identity ACE engineer in the CXP team.
Thank you, Manoj. So the session today is about identity governance and the value that it can bring for your company. So without further ado, let's dive in. So what is identity governance? Identity governance helps you to look at who has access, who should have access to resources, but also what are they doing with that access? And do we have the effective controls in place for managing that access so that if an auditor comes in, that he can verify that those controls are working and that you are doing a good job of keeping your environment healthy. Now, if we then look at our identity management and governance strategy, identity governance for us is a natural extension of what we have been doing in Azure AD. As you might know, Azure AD is a cloud solution. So that means that this is cloud governed management. That doesn't mean that we only manage cloud resources. If you need to manage resources on-premise, we have connectors. We can reach back to the on-premises environment and to help you manage those resources as well. We focus in the solution on a couple of different things. So a very important topic for us is self-service. We want to help the business with easy ways to request access to resources. So that if, for example, they need to have some additional application, they can go into the My Access portal, a self-service portal, and they can request access to that application. Depending on policies, it can be that there is an approval flow. They might have to fill in a business justification. So the whole idea here is to make it easier for your end users. So that they don't have to go into the service desk, create a ticket, wait for somebody in the service desk to pick up that ticket. There might be some manual actions to provision the access that they have been requesting. So this whole idea is to make this much easier, much more efficient for the end user to get access to additional resources. That means that a lot of our things in the solution are policy driven. Automation is key. Automation for your reviews, for your requests, for approvals. Pretty much everything that we do is policy driven as much as possible. And then thirdly, we focus a lot on analytics. We have a ton of signal in Azure AD today. And with those signals, we can give you good insights in how is your tenant doing. But it also addresses the reporting needs from a compliance perspective. And because this is built on Azure AD, as you probably are very well aware, Azure AD is built on standards. That's the same thing for the identity governance. It's built on standards. We use open standards like SCIM, for example. And that also means that we also have APIs. So we have APIs available so you can programmatically access all the features of identity governance as well. But those APIs also enables partners to extend the capabilities of identity governance. So to show you the value of Entra Identity Governance, we took our most favorite fake company, Contoso, and took a standard user journey to show you what value Entra Identity Governance can bring. So we will have a user. That user starts to collaborate with you if it's a partner, or if it's a new employee, they will join your company. The first thing that we need to do, we need to get that user into the directory. We have several ways of onboarding the user. It can come through inbound provisioning from an HR system. It can come from your on-premises directory. In case if it's a partner, we can invite them through the Azure AD B2B mechanism. Or even if you want to go really hardcore, you can enter them manually into the directory. But just having the user into the directory, that's not really useful. The user needs to get access to stuff. So that's the second step. We need to grant access to resources. And I specifically say resources here because this is not just applications. We can also give you access to groups, to team sites, to SharePoint sites, etc. And also from an application perspective, this is not just cloud applications. We also provide access to on-premises applications and also do provisioning into those on-premises applications. But the key thing in this first step is that we want to automate that first assignment of resources. It's also sometimes referred to as birthright assignment. When that user has that first set of resources, they might need to get access to additional resources. So we need to get into that self-service part. Maybe you will have somebody in marketing that needs to get access to some special tool to create slides or videos or something. So they can go into that My Access portal, they can request access to those resources, and depending on the policy, there might be an approval flow behind there. Now, when they have that applications, then we need to look at recertification. Recertification is going to be very important because the thing that you don't want to have in your directory is that you will have users that have access to applications or resources that they no longer need. So we need to kick off recertification campaigns to reduce the risk of users with stale access. Now, with everything else in identity governance, this is also policy driven. We kick off the review, or you decide what you want to review. The review is going to be kicked off. There are recommendations to help a reviewer to make a good decision. So recommendations are, for example, is this user still active? Is this maybe an outlier versus the rest of the people that have access to this resource? And when the recertification campaign is finished, depending on the outcome, we will remove the access to that resource. Now, this recertification does not only work for your employees, you can use it for your guest users, for your non-human identities, but also for your Azure AD roles. Then in the case that this is an administrator, we want also to make sure that the attack surface is small. And like if we are very realistic, most of the administrators, like 80% of their time, they will do the same things as a normal user. They will do their emails, they will do the Word documents, etc. They don't need administrative privileges all the time. So we have the privileged identity management module to provide just-in-time access to those privileged roles. So that if I need to get access to the Exchange environment, I can elevate myself into the Exchange administrator role. And when I elevate myself, there might be additional policies in place. And policies could be that there might be an approval workflow. You might need to do multi-factor authentication. And we recently also introduced that you can tie the elevation into conditional access policies. So you can use all of the richness that you have in conditional access for elevating into privileged roles now as well. And then the last step, at a certain point in time, somebody either stopped working for your company, maybe they will go to a competitor or to another company. In case if it's a partner, if you hire that person for a specific project, the project ends and they will stop collaborating with your company, then we need to make sure that we remove those access rights. So because what you don't want to have, if you had a contractor working for you on project X and that project ends and like 3-4 months later, they come back for another project and they still have access to the documentation and the resources from project X, where maybe there have been additional developments and there is some confidential information in there. So we need to make sure that those access rights are removed when somebody stops collaborating with your company or leaves your company. Now, there is already a lot of automation in all of these steps. Like there are a lot of policies that will help you automating these things. There is one additional level of automation that we can add, and that's something that we introduced in October, which is called lifecycle automation. Lifecycle automation will focus on the joiner, mover, and leaver flows. Now, there is one last thing in this user journey that is very important, and that is that ongoing auditing and reporting. So I talked about a lot of cool stuff that we have in Entra Identity Governance, and I can talk for many more hours on identity governance. But what's even better, we can show you how does this look like within the solution. So Manoj, can you take our viewers to a short demo of Entra Identity Governance?
Thanks, Peter. Definitely. We discussed how identity governance can help with user lifecycle and access management. Let's take a quick look at how the admin and the end user experience can be enhanced with the help of a quick demo. Imagine a fictional company by the name of Woodgrove, and they're building a new app for their finance team. Let's see how the process goes. They decided to onboard identity governance with this project. To start with that, they will create catalogs and access packages. Catalogs are container of resources and access packages. They are the parent set with which project owners can create access packages for them. Let's take a quick look at the creation process of a catalog. In this demo, I'm creating a catalog for the finance team. You can name it and provide the description that explains it. You can make it available for external users or just for internal users, depending upon your requirement. Once you create the catalog, you can add the resources that the different projects would need within the same catalog. We can add groups and teams that the users will need. You can also add applications and you can add additional SharePoint sites that are required for this project. You can add as many resources as you need for the from within the catalog, and the access package owners can decide which of those need to be there for the particular access package. Once a catalog is created, you can go ahead and create the access packages required for different projects. Let's look at the creation process of a particular access package for the developers. Here we see an example of developer manager creating an access package for his team. He will start with the name, the description that explains why the access package is being created for, and proceed with the next steps. From within the catalog, he can select which applications, which groups, and which SharePoint sites need to be part of this particular access package that's meant for the developers. Once that's done, he can also decide which roles the users will be assigned to from within the group or for the access role itself. Post that, we can decide whether this access package is going to be available for users in your directory or for users not in your directory, and if they can request access or if an admin has to directly assign access for this particular access package. You can also decide which groups and which users can request access for this access package. Here we are providing them access for the Woodgrow Marketing Partners group that the user was onboarded for. You can say whether this needs to be auto approved or it requires or the end user needs to go through an approval process. You can set it so that the managers of the corresponding users can approve it, or you also have the option to keep a fallback approval. You can say it requires justification or if it needs multi-stage review if it is a sensitive action. And finally, you can enable the access package for additional requests and create the access package. You can select manager as the approver, or you can also have a fallback approver who can take action if the manager is not available. You can decide how many days does the reviewer or the approver have before he takes an action. And finally, you can also indicate that the approver also needs to provide a justification before he approves it. You can enable it the access package for new requests and take additional steps as needed. With the requested information page, you can ask the end user for additional information that they need to provide, which is out of the box. It could be the project name, it could be his manager's name, it could be the reason why he is asking for access package manually, and so on. You have the option to provide a question and collect the information either in a text box format or with the multiple choice options. Post that, you can decide on the life cycle of the access package request. You can either select it for a set number of days or you can set it to expire on a specific date when the project ends. You can also let the user decide the timeline that he wants to have the request for. Once that part is done, you can enable the access reviews part for this access package, which helps in recertification of the end user's access. We'll take a quick look at it further in the demo. Custom extensions are also available to you within the access package, and these can help in notifying the end users at each stage of the access package request process. You have a set of default actions that are available, and these can act as the triggers for your custom extension. We'll take a look at custom extensions and how they can help with custom tasks further down the line. We looked at how an admin created an access package and catalog for his team. Now let's take a quick look at how a manager will onboard one of the developers who joined his team through entitlement management. He would start the process with a workflow. Lifecycle workflows are automated task flows which can be triggered either manually or on demand based on a specific user event. The event could be date of hire or it could be date of termination. We will look at pre-created workflow and see how the process of triggering the workflow for a new employee. The task section within the workflow will help you see the order in which the tasks are being performed. You can reorder the tasks and you can also decide to add more tasks from here. You have a set of predefined tasks and you also have the option of creating custom tasks. The execution conditions blade allows you to determine when this workflow is being triggered. You can scope it with the trigger, or you can scope it based on the event that we talked about earlier. It could be the user account creation date and so on. Now, you can have a schedule available for the triggering of this workflow, or we can run it on demand. Let's see how a manager triggers the workflow on demand for a user. Here we see a manager selecting the user and triggering the workflow on demand. Once the workflow is created, the workflow history section shows you a summary of the different triggers or different runs of this particular workflow. And after a few seconds, you should see the new user available in the report as well. By selecting the user, you can see the progress report of the different tasks that's being performed. You can see that in this example, you can see two tasks have completed and three are yet to be performed and are queued to perform in a sequential manner. Finally, let's take a look at the workflow settings, which determine the frequency in which the workflows look for triggers. You can schedule it to be performed every hour, every day, depending upon the workflow and what the business purpose is, you can determine that. You can also control from which email domain all the emails from within the workflow are being triggered, and you can even customize it by using a branding logo. Now that an end user has been onboarded through the lifecycle, he would have received a welcome email with the groups that he has access to and the access packages he has access to from within the workflow. Let's take a look at how the end user experience would be for requesting additional access that he needs. The user switches to his My Access portal and he can see the different access packages that he got access, and he can select the access package that he requires access for. It will display the resources that are part of the access package. He can submit the request by providing a justification and submitting the request. The request history blade shows the end user the different statuses of the requests that he has sent so far. They can either be cancelled, or it can be removed, or it can be in a pending approval state. Now, let's take a quick look at how the manager would see this in his My Access portal. When the manager switches to his My Access portal, he can see that there is a pending approval request. He selects the blade and he will see the request. He can see who requested it and what information he has provided and which access package is he looking for access. Post that, we can see the package details, which contains the list of resources that are available, and finally approve it by providing a justification as needed. We saw the request and the approval process. Let's see how access reviews can help with recertification of access and maintaining and removing active and inactive users from within the system. Here, in this demo, we'll take a quick look at how an access review can be created for access to a particular group. Once you select the groups, you can decide who is in the scope of this access review. It can be set for all the users in your organization, or it can be set for guest users only. You can also decide if this access review is going to be applied for all users irrespective of their access, or if it is only going to be applied for inactive users who haven't signed in the last 30 days. This is a great way to remove users' access if they are no longer active in the system. You can then determine if it needs to be a multi-stage review or who can act as the reviewers. You can have managers as reviewers and have the fallback reviewer if managers are not ready to take an action. You can select the frequency with which the access reviews are going to be performed, and you can also determine the end date for the review. After that, in the settings blade, you can determine what would happen if a reviewer doesn't take an action. You can say that you want to auto approve the actions that need to be performed, or you can select a predetermined action. In this case, it's because it's an inactive user, we'll select the option of removing access. If results are being auto applied, we can use an email or a DL that's available for us to get notified on. This will help in keeping an audit record, and also helping the admins manage what's happening. We can go ahead and create the access review after this. Once the access review is created, depending upon the scope and the conditions, it will be auto assigned to the managers or the approvers. Now, let's take a look at the manager and see how he would go and perform an access review. In the My Access portal, a manager can see the pending reviews that he needs to perform in the access reviews played. We can take a look at it by selecting the access review and determining how many users are part of the review. So far, 5 users have fallen under the condition, and based on that, the manager can decide what action needs to be performed. He can select a particular user, determine what action needs to be performed, and perform the similar action. Or he can do it from the home blade, and the final option that he has is to accept the recommendations that Microsoft generates based on the policy criteria. He can simply accept the recommendations if you want to do them in bulk, or if he can do them one by one. So we have seen in this demo the entire life cycle of identity and access management. We saw how a user get onboarded into the system, request additional access, and how manager is performing periodic checks for the access and removing any users who are no longer part of the system. With that, we saw how the admin and end user experience can be enhanced with identity governance. That's all I had for you guys in the demo. I'll leave it up to Peter for closing actions.
Thank you, Manoj, for that great demo. So what does Entra Identity Governance do? So we do the automatic provisioning and deprovisioning for that whole identity lifecycle. We have entitlement management capabilities for granting and reviewing that access. It's an open system. It's built on standards. It's policy-based. It provides those intelligent recommendations. And then lastly, we have the privileged identity management module that will provide a time-limited, just-in-time access to your Azure AD roles as well as Azure resources. So we added a slide for your reference. I will not go through the whole slide. Go to aka.ms/identity governance overview. If we have news to share, bringing out new features, we post that on the Entra blog. What I would also recommend, watch the sessions from Microsoft Secure, BRK22 and OD06. BRK22, that's about the Entra Identity Governance story. There is also some very cool insights on a new feature that we just released. That's the integration with Entra Verified ID. Very cool, so go check it out. There's also session OD06, which focuses on the lifecycle workflows. It tells you more, or it gives you more insights on how it's built, how it's working, how to set it up. And it also has a little bit more extensive demo than what we could provide in the time that we've had. Now, if you want to try this out for yourself, go to aka.ms/security free trial. You can set up a trial for this, either in your production environment or in your test environment. That's up to you. And of course, if you need help with Entra Identity Governance, don't hesitate to reach out to your Microsoft account team. They're more than willing to help you with setting it up or answering any questions that you have. Also, if you need a longer, in-depth session on identity governance, reach out to them and they can help you there. And if necessary, they can engage us as well. And with that, we would like to thank you for joining this session. It was gezellig. So now you've also learned a Dutch word that makes it already the best session of the event. Just as an FYI, there is no literal translation of gezellig into English. A person can be gezellig or the session can be gezellig. With that, we'd like to thank you for attending this session and we hope to see you soon.